In the 21st century, the nature of conflict has evolved dramatically. No longer are wars fought solely on traditional battlefields with armies and tanks. Instead, the front lines have shifted to digital spaces, where information is weaponized, to diplomatic halls where words carry the weight of missiles, and to the hearts of diaspora communities scattered across the globe. These new arenas of conflict are subtle, complex, and often invisible to the untrained eye, but their impact can be just as profound as any conventional war. In these faraway lands, diaspora communities become both bridges and battlegrounds, places where cultural identity is celebrated, but also where old grievances can be reignited and exploited by those with political agendas. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India found itself facing a new and insidious kind of threat, a shadow war, not waged with guns, but with ideology and influence. This conflict was fueled by secessionist movements, most notably the Khalistani cause, whose roots and resources stretched far beyond India's borders, reaching deep into countries like Canada. This was not a conventional threat that could be countered with military might alone. Instead, it was a test of India's resolve, its diplomatic finesse, and its ability to protect its sovereignty in a world where enemies could be both visible and invisible, both foreign and domestic. The resurgence of the Khalistani separatist movement in Canada posed a direct and immediate challenge to India's unity. It demanded a response that was not only firm and unyielding, but also sophisticated and measured, one that could address the root causes without alienating allies or escalating tensions unnecessarily. Modi's government chose a path of strategic patience. They avoided the extremes of aggression or passivity, instead opting for assertive diplomacy. This approach was designed to protect India's interests, maintain international partnerships, and send a clear message that India would not tolerate threats to its territorial integrity, no matter where they originated. The world watched closely as India confronted this unprecedented challenge. The fact that the threat came from a friendly nation made the situation even more delicate, testing the limits of international law, bilateral relations, and the global fight against extremism. The stakes were incredibly high. The outcome of this standoff would not only shape the future of Indo-Canadian relations, but also set a powerful precedent for how nations could counter foreign-backed extremism in an interconnected world. India's first move was calm, calculated, and strategic. The government made it clear that the core issue at stake was sovereignty, an inviolable principle that could not be compromised, no matter the diplomatic cost. For India, the activities taking place in Canada had crossed a critical red line. While freedom of expression is a cherished value in any democracy, it could never be used as a shield for incitement, violence, or the promotion of secessionism. This distinction was at the heart of India's argument on the global stage. Through clear and decisive leadership, Prime Minister Modi made India's stance unmistakable, not just to Canada, but to the entire world. He articulated the dangers of allowing extremist ideologies to flourish unchecked, especially when they threaten the peace and unity of sovereign nations. His administration launched a comprehensive campaign, exposing the threat, building new alliances, and asserting India's right to defend itself on every front. This was not just about one country or one movement. It was about setting a global standard for how democracies should respond to shadow wars in the modern era. This was far more than a diplomatic spat. It was a defining moment for India's foreign policy, a test of its maturity, its strength, and its ability to navigate the complexities of a rapidly changing world. The stage was set for a masterclass in modern diplomacy, with India determined to emerge stronger, more united, and more respected on the world stage. To truly grasp the complexities of the current situation in Canada, we must first revisit the roots of the Khalistan movement, a separatist cause that reached its violent peak in the 1980s, leaving Punjab deeply scarred both physically and emotionally. The era was marked by bombings, assassinations, and a heavy military crackdown which left thousands dead and entire communities traumatized. The wounds of that period still linger in the collective memory of many Sikhs, both in India and abroad. Although the movement was largely defeated within India, its embers continued to smolder in the Sikh diaspora, especially in countries like Canada, the UK, and the US. For many in these communities, the idea of Khalistan became intertwined with identity, nostalgia, and unresolved grievances. Over the decades, these sentiments were passed down to younger generations, sometimes evolving into activism and, in rare cases, radicalization. Indian intelligence agencies have long pointed to Pakistan's ISI as a key backer of the movement, using proxy groups to destabilize India from afar. The ISI's alleged support included funding, training, and logistical help, all designed to keep the Khalistan issue alive and to create unrest in India's Punjab region. These groups not only fund gurdwaras and community centers, but also run sophisticated disinformation campaigns online, glorifying militants as heroes and radicalizing young Sikhs abroad. Social media has become a powerful tool, spreading propaganda and connecting like-minded individuals across continents. By framing their cause as a human rights struggle, these groups gain legitimacy in host countries, making it difficult for governments to distinguish between genuine advocacy and extremist agendas. This narrative complicates official responses, as authorities must balance free speech with concerns about security and foreign interference. Canada, with its deep commitment to multiculturalism and freedom of expression, has struggled to draw clear lines between legitimate political expression and extremist activity. The challenge is further complicated by the country's large and politically active Sikh community, which is an integral part of Canada's social fabric. Into this volatile mix, Prime Minister Modi's government stepped, not with overt threats, but with a calculated strategy to expose the true nature of the plot. India began sharing intelligence, lobbying international partners, and calling for greater scrutiny of extremist networks operating abroad. The challenge was clear: to counter a tangled web of historical grievance, diaspora politics, and alleged state sponsorship. A web that stretches across continents and continues to test the resolve of governments on both sides of the world. Tensions between India and Canada erupted into a full-blown diplomatic crisis, sending shockwaves through international corridors of power. What began as simmering disagreements over political and security issues quickly escalated, drawing the attention of world leaders and the global media. The relationship between the two countries, once marked by cooperation and shared democratic values, suddenly found itself under immense strain. The situation intensified after a series of provocative incidents in Canada, including a rise in targeted violence and public demonstrations that highlighted deepening divisions within the diaspora communities. These events not only unsettled local populations but also raised concerns about the safety and security of minority groups. The attack on a Hindu temple in Brampton was a turning point, signaling that heated online rhetoric and ideological clashes were now spilling over into real-world confrontations. The incident left the community shaken and underscored the urgent need for authorities to address growing extremism and hate crimes. Matters escalated dramatically when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau publicly accused Indian agents of involvement in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a figure designated as a terrorist by India, but seen differently by some in Canada. Trudeau's statement, delivered in Parliament and echoed in press conferences, marked an unprecedented moment in bilateral relations. This extraordinary allegation triggered a swift and severe diplomatic fallout. Both countries expelled senior diplomats, and the usual channels of communication froze almost overnight. The world watched as the two nations, both important players on the global stage, entered a period of deep mistrust and uncertainty. India's response was immediate and unequivocal. Officials firmly rejected the allegations, calling them baseless and politically motivated. The Indian government also shifted the focus, urging Canada to take stronger action against extremist elements operating on its soil, and reframing the debate around the need for responsible governance. For Prime Minister Modi and his cabinet, the challenge was twofold: to defend India's global reputation and national interests, while also avoiding a complete rupture with a key G7 nation. The stakes were high, with economic, strategic, and diaspora ties hanging in the balance. The central dilemma was clear: stand firm on issues of sovereignty and national security, but also keep the door open for dialogue and future cooperation. Diplomacy, in this context, became a delicate balancing act. This careful balancing act, asserting national interests while maintaining the possibility of reconciliation, became the cornerstone of India's evolving diplomatic strategy, as both nations navigated one of the most challenging chapters in their modern relationship. Despite intense provocation, the Modi government chose disciplined diplomacy over public confrontation. India built its case through diplomatic channels, sharing evidence with allies about Khalistani extremist activities in Canada. Red lines were set. Cooperation depended on Canada taking credible action against anti-India elements. India's growing economic and strategic partnerships elsewhere reinforced its global standing, subtly isolating Canada on this issue. By refusing to escalate, India maintained the moral high ground and framed the conflict as a universal fight against extremism. This patient, multi-pronged approach wore down opposition and created conditions for a favorable resolution. The Modi doctrine prioritized long-term goals over short-term reactions. It was a masterstroke in modern statecraft. India's firm diplomacy and international scrutiny began to shift Canada's approach. Canada quietly established joint task forces and intelligence sharing with India, targeting the nexus of crime and extremism. Law enforcement increased action against hate and violence, echoing India's concerns. This pivot, driven by a new pragmatic outlook, aligned Canada's policy with India's security interests. Assertive diplomacy, backed by evidence and patience, altered a partner nation's stance. It was a victory for strategic engagement over public confrontation. The Indian diaspora in Canada played a crucial, often overlooked role. While media spotlighted a vocal minority, the majority of Indo-Canadians, Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, rejected secessionism and violence. They mobilized for unity, engaging with officials and countering extremist narratives. Their grassroots efforts provided political support for a tougher stance against extremism. Peaceful rallies and community outreach showcased their patriotism and pluralism. Modi's government nurtured this connection, empowering the diaspora as cultural ambassadors. The rejection of extremism by the majority isolated the fringe and strengthened the case for unity. As India's strategy took effect and Canada shifted, attention turned to Pakistan's alleged role. India's evidence-backed claims about Pakistan's support for extremism gained traction internationally. Pakistan's defensive reactions only deepened its isolation. Western nations began cooperating more with India, curtailing Pakistan's proxy operations. The flow of support to extremist groups dried up and their legitimacy waned. Khalistani activism was increasingly seen as foreign-backed extremism, not a freedom struggle. India's diplomatic campaign left Pakistan exposed and on the defensive. Modi's government had turned the tables, making Pakistan's position untenable. India's handling of the crisis offers a blueprint for nations facing foreign interference. The first lesson: calm strategic diplomacy is more effective than public confrontation. India controlled the narrative, built consensus, and protected partnerships. Second, building alliances is crucial. India turned a bilateral problem into a multilateral concern. Third, engaging the diaspora can counter extremist narratives and promote unity. The Modi government empowered the patriotic majority abroad, turning them into a first line of defense. India's approach combined firm defense of sovereignty with pragmatic alliance building. The result? A masterclass in defending national interests through strategic diplomacy. For nations facing similar threats, the lesson is clear: sovereignty is best protected by unwavering, sophisticated statecraft.